You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 520, our coverage of episode 3 of the Ahsoka series. And if there was ever a Dave Filoni episode, this is probably the Dave Filoni of the Dave Filoniest episodes ever. And it had everything that you could possibly want from Star Wars and possibly want from a George Lucas influenced heavy kind of Star Wars anything. And we've got a lot to talk about, even though it was, controversially only 30 minutes long. And I think we're going to kind of peel back that a little bit too, and just kind of get some thoughts on how we felt that really went, good or bad. And by we, I mean, of course, none other than Jonesy, who's with me tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of Dave Filoni in this one, all over. It's almost like you wrote it.
Yeah, that's weird. It's funny how that kind of worked out like that, but you're right. Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. It was a good episode, though. I mean, I think there's a little bit of pacing maybe I'm still having an issue with in some of it, but I think overall, great kind of throwback to what we had with in Clone Wars with Ahsoka going out in space, which was unexpected, but answered our questions about how they get down to the planet and what's next.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it had lightsabers, force training, force powers. We had Purrgil, Jason Syndulla, Mon Mothma. There was references to, I guess maybe callbacks to Clone Wars, Rebels, Andor at one point. A New Hope was even in there. Resistance, my goodness, we had a Xiono appearance. So, Old Republic and Princess Bride.
Yeah, Xiono's exactly like he always has been too. He's still a jerk. So
yeah, for sure. But hey, before we get started,
Princess Bride, nicely done.
People, that's a joke. Yeah, check social media if you need to see what that's all about. Hey, people that aren't jerks are some of the folks that are with us tonight.
Absolutely. And actually, thank you to Matt and Danny. And I believe Danny is actually with us here in the live stream as well. Thank you for joining Patreon. So appreciate y'all joining there. And of course, a special thanks to our now part of the tribe members, Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Rist, Justin, Jackson, Truckman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Reader Reborn. And then Delusions Grandeur members, Rod, CJ, Alex, and Steve. Actually got it right this time.
I was laughing. Yeah, good job.
Yeah, I just had to pause. Anyway, if you're curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. We'll have tiers for everybody, whether it's audio or if you want video. If you want to come out for our Patreon-only streams, which are usually at 10 p.m., we'll have one of those on Sunday. We'd love to have you. If you're curious to come out and live stream like all these amazing people, cantinacast.com/YouTube. And you could be like Steph, Alexandra, Jack, Gary, Sky, Rob, Danny, Qui-Gon J, Keaton, Jeff, and Ash in the chat. So come out and join us.
Yeah.
Join the conversation.
More to come. Sorry, I was distracted because as you were talking, Secret Lab, if you have a Secret Lab chair, then kudos to you because they're pretty amazing. But they just released the Ahsoka skin, and it looks pretty dang cool. So I may have to.
All right, yeah, you sent me this, but you didn't send me the price tag that went along with it. How much is the skin?
So I sent you the teaser. Like they hadn't really announced it yet. So
okay.
In fact, this is breaking news that this has been released. But you've got to see this. So if you Secret Lab makes these like high end gaming chairs, and I think Jonesy and I both own one because they're just that cool. But they have an Ahsoka edition skin that kind of goes over the cushions, and while I'm stalling here, I'm trying to get to the price. I don't even see it on here. That's
when you first sent this to me, and I was like, okay, well, what is this? And you said, well, it's a Secret Labs. I'm like, okay, but they haven't even shipped the other Star Wars Secret Labs chairs, I don't think. So I was like, I can't come out with another one already. They should ship the one they pre-ordered forever ago. So, yeah, but the skins are pretty cool. You can do other things with it. So if you have one, no matter the model, you can dress it up to your heart's content.
So they got a Boba Fett they just released as well. So it's Boba Fett, Ahsoka. Looks like it's $199 for the Secret Lab Titan Pro or Evo. If you've got that chair, you can get that skin. But
wow, $200 just for the skin. That's crazy.
Hey, I've spent a lot more on a lot less, so I may have to do that.
This is true. I sent Albert pictures the other day. I know this is kind of off topic here. This isn't the way station, but I sent you pictures the other day of like stuff I'd come across at a store where you're like, nope, sorry, I'm broke. And then you get something like this, just where your priorities are at.
Yeah, that's typical me. Okay, well, again, thanks everybody for being here on the live show. Let's get into this episode breakdown. So I know we've kind of just already talked about our initial thoughts, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. 30 minutes, or the Purrgil in the room. the 30-minute episode, a lot of controversy around, is it long enough? What are we going to get? What are they trying to do here? And I think you and I both kind of landed on, hey, whatever it takes is whatever it takes. I think anything less than 30 minutes does feel kind of, I don't know, criminal, but I would still stand by the statement of, as long as I walk away from that episode feeling like they conveyed the message I needed them to convey, I felt pretty good about the episode itself. Aside from just longing more and more Star Wars and long Star Wars, which I think we've always wanted, no matter what, I was pretty happy with it. I think it was content. I was content enough. But what did you think about that? The time length on this one?
Yeah, I think the time was fine. And I think the reason why it was okay was because this is very much a connector episode, not filler, because filler means you get nothing out of it. It's completely unrelated. It doesn't serve the story at all. And this one definitely does, right? You have the moments with Ahsoka and Sabine. You get Hugh Yang being amazing, which is just kind of every scene he's in. But you get from point A to point B, or really you're on your way to point D, and you had to go in between, right? So it's a good connecting episode, but they also put things of value in there in order to get us down to the surface. So I'm really happy this one was only 30 minutes. This is kind of what we expected to. I think we were hoping we'd go ahead and get straight to the planet, but to show us the imagery of the Purrgil, bridge some of those gaps, find the Eye of Sion, understand what that is, have them not be stupid with it. They recognize exactly for what it is. They've got the initial scan. Those types of things are important just to get the story moving along, but not dwell too long on it. So I think the timing of the episode really worked out just fine.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm going to go to the comments because some folks are already chiming in on the time. Qui-Gon Jay says, hello there, part 3, Time to Fly was the best half of an episode I've ever seen. Jeff said, great episode, great show, great times. Keaton's with us tonight. Hey, Keaton said, hello, this one was great. Rob says it was a fun show. And let's see, we got some other folks chiming in on some other things, but so far, so I think, and by and large, I think a lot of people online, if I could just speak for the masses, have been pretty positive. In fact, I don't even know there was a lot of discussion around the time, even after it had aired. I mean, most people were kind of focused on the content, which is was a good sign for me that they did exactly what they should have. So
yeah, no, there's rumors out there that episode 4 or part 4 is about 42 minutes long. So
I saw that,
we're going back to kind of that normal hour-long type of show format, like hour-long network TV show. So I think going back to 42 means that if that turns out to be true, and it seems Peter Ramsey's kind of confirmed that, or at least in a roundabout way. So I think it's something that you could at least go back to and say, okay, there's going to be more teeth to the next episode than what we had here, which was definitely just kind of moving the story along. So we'll actually get back to some of the things that we probably crave most as Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I know it's not the best analogy, but a lot of times we can compare. We've compared this to like a book. Sometimes you have chapters that are 2-3 pages at most, and sometimes they go 15, 16. It's just a matter of what they're trying to convey within that particular chapter. If you want to look at, about to say chopper. If you want to look at it in that perspective, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. I think at the end of the day, when we get through the entire series and we're looking back, I think we'll have a pretty good gauge, a better gauge of whether or not this really made any difference one way or the other. And Jay's Valley is with us for the first time. Said, first time watching live on YouTube, awesome graphics and visual. Oh, thank you very much. We actually had a better graphic in the background, but Jonesy changed it on me last minute, which is why it was kind of helter-skelter at the beginning there, because I was laughing hysterically, maniacally.
It was SWOTOR. It's always SWOTOR with this guy.
I almost started the show, and you didn't change it until I said anything, but I thought, no, he's going to be so mad because I snuck that in there.
I change things in the background all the time. People don't notice. But yeah.
Oh, all right. So so if you, again, first time here or listening to the show, watching the video, thank you. But what we do is we're kind of step through the episode and kind of comment on how this thing kind of played out. And I'm going to start off by saying, like, I will never grow tired of watching any, like, the hyperspace tunnel. But there was just something special about this one and having that T6 shuttle and they just held on that shot for so long. But it's just that humming noise. Like, I think I could sleep to that noise, like sleep really well,
Do they have like one of those loaf or what are they, SoFi or whatever they're called that Star Wars will put out on YouTube, like for the meditation things? They have one for hyperspace.
I think they did, as a matter of fact. I want to say they did. I think that it was sense. I think it was during Mandalorian, and it was like Baby Yoda and Mando there. So, but yeah, I didn't think about trying to sleep to that.
Actually, Gary makes a great point. He says he's dying to see the hyperspace tunnel between galaxies. I'm curious if it's different. I mean, that's a great point. I hope it is. I hope it's familiar, but I hope it's something unique and different that says, intergalactic travel is something a little special and a little bit unique. It's not your typical hyperspace lane. That doesn't mean I don't think it's going to be red or something like that, but does it have a different hue or a different shade to it? Would be really kind of interesting and neat to see.
Yeah, I think audibly I'd like to hear something different too, right? And visually too, I would expect that to be the same, but I wouldn't go too far. I wouldn't get too crazy. And if they went like, oh, it's just now red and everything else is the same, that okay, then they kind of mailed it in on that one. But
Right.
I am interested to see if they're actually going to show us, quite honestly. Okay, so we open up with this training montage, for lack of a better term. It's really not a montage, but it reminded very similar to, an 80s movie where they're training and, there wasn't any kind of like Stan Bush music going on in the background, but short of that, we got to see them going through katas, I guess would be the equivalent here for Jedi, the different forms. And, he was shouting out Key Ray. I could not remember. Had we ever heard this before in Legends, like the counting or the count-offs for the different cuts, I guess?
I don't remember them, but then again, I may not have actually paid attention to as much of it back then. So I really don't know. But it was interesting, though. I mean, it's cool. There's kind of a command and a step through for each one. We didn't get it in Rebels. I know that much, yeah. Albert's looking for something.
Sorry, I was going to grab. I'm going to go. So there's this book, this Jedi versus Sith book that I'll dig into. It's got all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But it was cool to see it, right? Firsthand, finally get to see kind of what training looks like. And to your point, like Hu Yang throughout this entire episode, throughout this entire series, like he's starting to turn into the MVP because he's just this voice of reason. He is a little bit more callous and forward and blunt about a lot of things, but he's not been wrong about really anything. And then you couple that with some of the comedic elements that he's got that he does later on, and we're gonna talk about those. And wow, I mean, Tennant's just like killing it on this series so far with a character that, I mean, he was popular in the Clone Wars, but he really hasn't had a lot of limelight since then, and he's getting quite a bit of it now, and it's a good thing. So
I can imagine what editing the show would have been like. I would have just been cracking up the entire time, which is how much fun like David Tennant seems like he's probably having doing this.
Yeah. But, he's kind of ribbing Sabine here a little bit, talking about not bad, not good in terms of how she did, and he's like, obviously, and barely, right? I mean, he's just kind of being straight up with her, very, very transparent about how things are going. And, he tells her that she was I think it's Sabine says, he told me that I was the worst Jedi ever known. And he's like, it's true. And I guess
worst candidate at the very least.
Right. And so I guess the kind of the only question that I really had here was, and I think we maybe touched on this in just a little bit in the last episode when he was having that scene in the hospital there and kind of handing the lightsaber over to her. But it feels like he is trying to push Sabine into this idea that, you've got nothing to lose, right? I mean, everything's against you, and yet here you are kind of thing. And I think she's starting to pick up on that. I think Ahsoka's probably going to lean into that a little bit more too. But I do love that he's challenging her, even though it comes across as offensive maybe, or a little too blunt. I do like his approach because I think it works for somebody like Sabine, who's a Mandalorian. I think it kind of aligns. That's probably what she needs, is that little swift kick in the butt or that encouragement that's a little bit rough on that side. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think with the Jedi, you can't, I mean, even Kanan wasn't doing this. At some point, he wouldn't coddle Sabine, right? And he had to challenge her and he had to push her. And he's not going to be as passionate as a Sabine would be, or I don't know if Ahsoka is the right word to use passion with a lot of times, at least at this stage in her life. But, with what we saw in Kanan, when he had her on the ground with the lightsaber and just started yelling at her about discipline and things like that, of her training, what she knows will only take her so far. But she kind of gets this a little bit too between the two. She's got both Hu Yang just giving her the straight matter-of-fact answers. But then Ahsoka, I think to her credit, has also been giving her more of the verbal affirmations that maybe, but still being straightforward with her. You would be dead, right? If you didn't sense this coming, you would be dead. But also picking her up after that, give her the harsh reality of it, but also let's move forward. Let's do this again. Even when she takes her down, and she says frustration and anger and all of that start to boil the surface, and their path to the dark side effectively. Those are the things that get up. Let's try it again. And it was very supportive in that kind of way. So I think it's a good balance between the two, without necessarily the harsh negative criticism from either character, either Hu Yang or for Ahsoka.
Yeah. And so we kind of transition now into, I think, probably one of the more pivotal scenes, like one of the more substantial scenes. And although there's really not a whole lot there, I was telling Jonesy before we came on the air, I wrote a Jeditorial, and I think I'm going to record it and put it to video or something, and then release it a little bit later this week, if not tonight or tomorrow. But, and it's really kind of focused around this idea of who can actually master the Force. Because we get this kind of dialogue between them where, Ahsoka's saying that it kind of comes down to discipline and focus and training. And, I posted a video of some of the things that Kanan had said as well. And I think they're pretty much on the same track in terms of what it's going to take for her to learn that. But I guess on your thoughts, I mean, just in general, without getting a whole lot of detail here, like, are you open to this concept that anybody can wield the Force, and it's really not that easy, and that's, probably okay. It's accessible, but not easy to master or really take off unless there's some talent and some other things in your favor there.
I think I'm warming up to it a little bit about an adult being able to learn how to yield it. I think before we've seen it where, younger people could be trained, and if you don't use it over time, you lose it. So I think the only thing I'm maybe, I don't know, concerned's the right word, but maybe confused by is that, has that gone away? Have we changed our opinion on that of, like, if you don't use it for a while or if you've never really shown ability, how can you go and do it? So, but I like the idea that you can train yourself to an extent. And I think Ahsoka says as much to Hugh Younger, and he's kind of giving her a bit of a reproach of, there's no way the Jedi would have taken this. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. But at the same time, she's like, it is possible, though. And that she doesn't need her to be a Jedi. She needs her to be herself. She needs to be able to embrace all of the different things that she can do. I think this is both Mandalorian and Jedi inspired as well. So if that includes wielding the Force in some kind of way, or at least helping you bring your abilities to another level, I think I'm okay with that. And is she going to be out there wielding the Force and throwing objects and pushing people back and all that kind of crazy stuff? I would anticipate probably not, at least not in this series. That would be a pretty big leap. But I am warming a bit to the idea that she would have some ability and be able to do something in the Force, even if it were small, but it could maybe still be a difference maker.
Yeah. In the chat, Ash said, so I've explained the Force is everyone can throw a football, only a select many can make a career out of it. That's similar to what George Lucas said back in 1981. And on this either editorial or video that I'm going to release, I've got some information in there. I got that quote in there kind of talking about it, because this is something that's not new. I mean, I think it sounds weird for a lot of us because we've never really thought about anybody can use a Force, even though we have. I cite examples of where that is actually true. Luke being the most obvious and probably the oldest of any of these folks that ever went through the training. And then to piggyback on what Music Train's saying, he said they just need to test your midichlorian count. I think midichlorian counts, I actually have it in there as well. And the way I was kind of comparing that is kind of your potential, right? A higher midichlorian count means you have more potential. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be great. Doesn't necessarily going to be throwing lightsabers and Force crushing things left and right. But it does kind of size the amount of potential you possibly have given your talent, focus, discipline, all that stuff. So I don't know. I'm okay with this. Like I said, I love the fact that she's not Force sensitive right now, oh boy, that's a can of worms now too. Right. Pablo Hidalgo, by the way, was on Twitter the day after trying to clear the air on Force sensitive versus Force user. A lot of people were kind of throwing those words around. I think we've used them interchangeably for so long, but with this episode now, it's really kind of brought this conversation to the surface about what does it mean for them. And I think the way he kind of phrased it was, let's just call it gifted, right? Stop using the term Force sensitive versus Force user, because it's more nuanced than that. So,
well, Ahsoka makes a point of saying that too. Talent is a part of it, but so is hard work and being able to train yourself and have that discipline in order to invite it in some ways too, right? It is a part of everybody, but how do you actually get it? How do you listen to it? How do you get it to speak, right? And that's a big difference, right? But talent is a part of it, but it's not all of it. You can work really hard and maybe not be naturally gifted at something, but still be pretty proficient at it in some way, right? So I think that's the idea. And to Ash's point, it's something like along those lines as well. You can get better at things, but it doesn't mean you're going to go and make a career. You're going to be at the top, echelon of your peers in that regard. But it doesn't mean that you're useless either.
Yeah. I think George used the analogy of yoga. Of all things, I don't know why yoga, but that's the way it was.
Does not strike me as a yogi
at all. Noah says, also, does this change the long-standing idea that clones can't wield the Force? Palpatine dark experiments aside, I think in Legends that stuck. I think ever since the Clone Wars and the very first episode of the Clone Wars and that whole speech that Yoda gives the clones, that forever changed my position on that. Like I felt like they were, even though they've never done it, I think they were kind of signaling that if you're a living being, regardless if you're created in the lab or through natural birth of some sort, you have the Force in you. And therefore, by definition, you maybe have the potential, right? If you have a teacher and all the other stuff that we've just talked about.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. So the Jedi helmet scene, like this was heavy shades of A New Hope. Right. Hopefully everybody caught on to that. I mean, it was kind of on the nose at some points.
It was exactly one of the same lines. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was I can't see, how am I supposed to fight? But with the blast shield down, how can I even see? The other one was I want you to see more within your eyes versus your eyes can deceive you, don't trust them. I mean, it was just almost a direct parallels there. It was a more modernized, version of that particular scene. I didn't get a chance to see the symbol, and maybe you or somebody in the chat can help us, but that symbol, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, okay, cool. They're leaning on the old Republic kind of Jedi symbol. But then there was like a piece that was missing in the middle. So I didn't really kind of understand what that helmet was. It looked like of the era of some sort. It was new to me, but I don't know. Did you catch anything there?
Yeah, I couldn't find anything about what that might have been, but you're right. It did have very much a Republic-inspired logo. Also, at a glance, I think the very first time I saw it, thought it was Ahsoka, like her Montrails or whatever on the emblem. But the closer I looked at that didn't seem to make sense either. So, yeah, it's something. I don't know what that means. And maybe this is a way for people to say she's a way seeker, and that's the symbol of a way seeker. I don't know.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Or it could just be a helmet, and that's just the brand. I don't really do brands in Star Wars very often, but maybe there's something like that. But it was a unique
Nike. That's the Nike helmet of Star Wars.
Right? Yeah. Ahsoka's really got a licensing career going on, so she's got her name out there. But no, it was a cool logo though. But I like that it was inspired, but it is different than what we've seen elsewhere. So it does inspire a little bit of conversation there.
Yep. The leaked footage does confirm that too, because I think she turns to Sabine and says, "Just do it." So, I mean, it's kind of again on the nose. It's a little, but yeah. All right. Bad
she
jokes,
turned around with like a Mentos as well and just popped it up.
Maybe. Okay, so we get into the training of all of this, and and the first thing that came to mind as she was training, like, again, we have a different Ahsoka. We're not going to get into that here. I think we've talked enough about that. I think we're expecting to kind of understand. If we don't, if they don't say it explicitly, or they don't give her an opportunity to kind of talk about what she's been through, the trauma that she's been through, there's a lot there. Just trust us. So I'm kind of chalking up to her. Or chalking up her current personality not matching Clone Wars or even Rebels to that. But it does feel like she is a little bit more aggressive, I guess, with her training. I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe not aggressive, but certainly a little bit more serious. She takes a very serious tone. And at first I was thinking, well, I don't know how I feel about that. But then I was thinking, well, if you think about the way Anakin trained her, and specifically when we got the Tales of the Jedi episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Where he says, the best way I can protect you is to teach you how to protect yourself. He was pretty hard on her. I mean, they shot her for like hours on end with stun blasters and for days, and lots and lots of repetition. But that is kind of what Anakin does, right? We would expect him to do that. So from that perspective, I guess I can see where she is probably going to be a little bit hard on her for training, on top of the fact that she knows that she's not a Jedi. She's not Force sensitive. And if she's bringing her on this journey, she is probably going to be a little bit more strict, a little bit more hard-edged, because she has a lot to rise up to. I mean, she says as much to her, right, right. About all of this as well. But what did you think about, I guess, the training that she was going to, and I guess her approach with Sabine?
Yeah, actually, I looked at it from the other side too, is that Sabine, while she does get frustrated and you do feel the emotions, you're waiting for her to do like have an outburst about it and take the helm off and just throw it or whatever. But to Sabine's credit, she does. And she says as much, I'm going to give this my best, when they start to part ways after the training's over, or after their discussion, after you're trying to use the Force. But I like that she is aware enough to where she being Sabine is not going to overreact, and that she does know that this is a process, and she does have to train. She does need to give it that time, right? And I think to Ahsoka's credit, I do like this. This was a great callback to Tales of the Jedi, actually. I mean, we've had a couple of these already, but to where she doesn't give up, and it is continuous, right? You fail, you get up and you try again. You get up, you fail, you get up and you try it again. And you just keep at it, right? Because that repetition is a good thing, but also creating that discipline in your mind and being able to stretch out and reach out and slowly enhance your awareness and your senses as well, to give you a more well-rounded approach to how you're going to fight enemies, and to give you a more dynamic style of both defense and potential offense as well. So I like the dynamic. I think they're both doing it kind of the right way. And Ahsoka is not, even Anakin got a little more animated with her than Ahsoka's doing with Sabine right at this point.
For sure.
Right. And so I like that Ahsoka blends that more discipline, less emotion, but then at the very end she goes, let's do it again. Just kind of matter-of-factly, as in we're just going to keep doing this over and over and over. But they're doing it together, right? They're together in this journey. For both of them, they're both getting something out of this. But she also knows what's in front of them. Balin, Shin, the Inquisitor, and now Morgan Elsbeth, which I don't think they probably know the whole story about Morgan Elsbeth. They've got quite the challenge in front of them with those four characters alone not to mention all the henchmen and everything else. So they need to make progress, and she can't overreact. Neither one of them can overreact to the situation overall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gary said, how much second guessing do you think Ahsoka must do, having been taught by Anakin? I mean, Vader, no, Anakin. Yeah, I mean, that's probably on the back of her mind, I think, the entire time. And hey, Risk is with us, says, I feel like Ahsoka is much more somber than she comes off to be. So yeah, and like I said, there's a lot there. I mean, she's the last of very few Jedi. All of her clones, all her family's been killed. I mean, we kind of talked about this on a previous episode. So I think it's fine. I think it's where she probably needs to be. I hope she pulls out of this. I hope there's a way for her to kind of rise up. Maybe she never will, and that's fine too, but I would like to see her kind of rise up. We get glimpses of this later, though. I want to be clear about that, because when we saw her and Hu Yang together, you actually saw her smile. When the Purgo came, she smiled. So I'm kind of looking at as the trend is going up in terms of, seeing the light, I guess, from that perspective. But
careful with that. Careful where that takes you, my friend.
Right. Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, by the way, so the music too. Like, I love the music in this scene. I love the way the episode kicked off with that kind of samurai. Again, a huge like samurai type film tones to the music that the Kiner brothers are bringing here. But definitely loved it during this little training thing here. And then the way they ended this scene was anger gives you power, but it also imbalances you, right? And so that kind of hitting home the fact that the dark side is quicker, more seductive, but it pulls you out of balance. And so we'll see if that comes up a little bit later, or if they kind of circle back to that in some way. But I really enjoyed the way they kind of close this scene off.
That was good.
Okay, we go to the new fleet. So from here, we've got Hera finally meeting Mon Mothma. I know you're a big Mon Mothma fan, or maybe a Genevieve O'Reilly fan. Maybe it's one of the same to you. I don't know, but it was kind of refreshing to see her, honestly. The minute she started talking, I was like, oh, I just love her so much. And right. I just love the fact that she's here, even if she didn't have, this may be all the dialogue we get from her, quite honestly. And I think I'm okay with that, but it was just something. It was again, very refreshing to kind of see her there. But again, she was amongst a number of other jerkwads, including, Kaz's dad, who was a total, I don't know. Well, we can talk about exactly where he's coming from, because he is consistent where he was in the Star Wars Resistance for all the 4 people that watched it. But what did you think about that scene? I guess in general, any thoughts around that? I've got some other stuff here that I want to dig into a little bit.
Yeah, I like that Hera and Mon Mothma had a relationship, right? It was a friendship. They were genuinely, while it was uncomfortable for everyone else to kind of be patient and let them get through all the pleasantries, it was really cool watching them, have that dynamic, and that they're invested in one another and value each other, both as friends, but also as professional colleagues in that kind of way as well. So it was really cool. Of course, it gave us the name drop for Jason as well, but it was nice to see that dynamic at play. I think with the Senators, though, I think it was important, and we speculate on this, and it was a pretty safe speculation. It's not like we did anything crazy here, but it affirmed and confirmed why they're so resistant to devote any resources to these types of things. So Hera's apparently been in this place before, right? Mm-hmm. The idea of the galaxy does not want another war, but they also don't want to have anybody that senses like we need to be going to war, or that there's a threat, and they want to move past that. The people don't want it, according to the Senators, right, that they represent. So we're very hesitant to really give you those resources to go on another wild goose hunt. And especially, there seems to be a lot of animosity, or at least maybe disbelief around Ezra, like Hera going after Ezra again, and maybe she got a bit obsessed at one point with her friend and trying to find him, or whatever it might have been with Thrawn as well, and what this threat is, and they just don't believe it because there's no evidence of it, and they can't believe anything that's not in front of their face.
Yeah. Well, and it's been the better part of 10 years almost now at this point, where they've not had, the Empire rise, and this shadowy figure of Thrawn. There's not enough there. And I don't get me wrong, like, I hate the fact that they were so quick to shut her down and say, please leave the room, you're excused, kind of thing. But I do understand where they're coming from too. So I don't think it was a sign to necessarily that, they're ignorant or they're short-sighted in some way. But if the facts are on their side, right, the data is there for them to say, yeah, this is not the best use of our resources. We're trying to rebuild an entire galaxy, much less the Republic, but they're trying to rebuild this galaxy after this big vacant hole that was now created with the Empire falling. So
yeah, and even Ziono says that what they were suspecting, that it leads to suggests a larger operation, or more corruption or whatever, and he seems to confirm that without any kind of, subtlety any there about that he was discarding what Hera's finding was. Well, yeah, that makes sense. Usually we see one of these, it's everywhere, but the bouncing back and forth of, but they pledged loyalty. I mean, come on. I mean, this whole program they pledge loyalty, but it doesn't mean that they're all good eggs within all of that too. And you could tell the passion that Hera has. I mean, I was really surprised that she almost had she did. She had an outburst, right? Especially when it came to Ezra.
Right.
You don't know that. And you could just see her loss of composure and had to finally, she recognized it and had to get herself back together with just battling back and forth with Sion. They seem to have a history here. So there's something happened there where, this has gone on for a while, and it's clearly really the tension is right there on the surface with both of them.
Yeah, and I have it in my notes here, but Mary Elizabeth Winstead does an incredible job here. I've enjoyed her take on Ahsoka so far. I think there's been some really great moments and some pretty good moments. I don't think she's done a bad thing just yet, but this particular scene, it was 100% Hera. Everything from her mannerisms, the way she stood up for Ezra, you could see it in her eyes, and she was glaring at Ziono, and you could see it wasn't until going back to what you said earlier, that personal relationship between Mothma and her, because she says general and Hera doesn't flinch. When she says Hera, it snaps her out of it, right? So right. I love the fact that that's what it took, was for her to kind of personalize that, to pull her out of it and then kind of say, look, I'm going to talk, give her the time to cool down, give Hera the time to cool down, and, maybe, cooler heads will prevail. Of course, that didn't work out the way she was expecting, but all of that was really great. I thought she was just really good in all of these scenes here, honestly, throughout this entire episode, even if she only had just a few of them here. We just quickly go back to the Jason and Chopper reference. With the way Mon Mothma says that, I think in my head, at least, this isn't the first time they've been loose on the station. And there was almost like oh my gosh, are you kidding me? They're loose right now. They're probably getting into trouble. She's probably recalling all the crap that they've done in previous, outings, running around on the ship loose and unattended. So, but it was good to see them. I was not expecting that. And I will admit, I got a little watery, teary eyed when I saw Jason, because I just wasn't sure what to expect. And the minute he said, I think he said, to paraphrase, I want to be a Jedi, I just was like, oh, just rip my heart out. The fact that I thought they did a good job with the casting. He looks like a blend of, I guess Kanan or maybe Freddie Prinze Jr. I don't know what they were going for there, and Hera. I don't have a problem with the changes that they made to the animation, right? I'm totally fine with that. But what really gutted me was the fact that he's got that little shoulder epaulette thing there, that shoulder plate. Yeah, and it's got the Doom symbol on there. Oh my goodness. I mean, they're just, and they haven't really shown it. You can see it, and if you zoom in, there's people have already kind of have the images out there, but at some point, I don't know if that's going to be ever referenced, but the minute that comes full center into the shot and you can actually see it, I think it's going to be a kind of a cool moment. So
yeah, to be clear, I don't think it's Kanan's though, right? Yeah, it's very small. Kanan's was quite large.
Well, no, yeah, I don't think it's his, right? Yeah, right. Exactly. But the fact that he's honoring his father in that regard and wants to be a Jedi, which, I mean, I said, mark the time. Knowing Dave Filoni, that he's just telling you that's going to happen. Now it's just a matter of who's going to train him. Is it going to be Sabine, which was the first one that came to mind? I don't know why, even given that she's been Force sensitive, but I love the idea that she would train him. The more obvious one would be somebody like Ezra, should he come back later down the road. Maybe it's Ahsoka. Whatever it is, when we have that scene, and just, again, similar to, we've always wanted somebody to talk to Luke about Vader and his dad, about Anakin Skywalker. And right now, Ahsoka is probably the best person. Hopefully, we'll get to see that sometime. Hopefully, I get to see that in my lifetime. But that to me is just as intriguing and just as sweet, to have somebody talk to Kanan about what kind of a Jedi he was. Ezra would probably be the best one, since he was trained directly and had such a relationship with him, almost as his own father. But I think anybody that had any kind of contact with Kanan, talking to Jason about his dad and what he was like and what he stood up for. I mean, I just hope we get that, because there's just something really sweet about being able to kind of hear that firsthand.
And I'm curious. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, we presume that Ahsoka knows Luke at this point, right? It seems the timing is all more or less on top of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. So presumably she knows Luke. So was it ever recommended to Hera that Jason go spend time with Luke or be evaluated by Luke in any kind of way? Now, granted, he's much older than if Ahsoka's only got to know Luke in the last couple of years or something like that. Jason would have been, a little bit more advanced in age, but I don't think Luke would necessarily turn him away, especially if there was that strength of the Force in him. So kind of interesting there to see if we'll get more developed there about what has Jason's life been like for the last several years that he's been around.
Yeah, I think so. Keaton's asking that question right now. Similar, says, how much do you think we'll see Jason in the series? He says, I feel like not a lot. I'm I think he's going to be in it still. We're going to get scenes. I don't know that we're going to get the deep, emotional, heavy scenes that I'm talking about. I think he and Chopper will be kind of like we talked about. I think they're going to be the buddy cop duo, or just the buddy duo for comedic for relief, right? Which I think would be great.
Right. Yeah, and Jeff had a response there. I think it might be the only Jason appearance, but they made it count. Yeah, we don't know how often we'll see Hera anymore either, right? So presumably Hera will kind of bounce in and out. And so if you think we get Hera maybe in 50% of the next several episodes, and then 50% of that maybe Jason, something like that. But Chopper would likely be there as well. I mean, they gave them their own character posters, so presumably there's a little bit more to them there, but maybe not. So we'll see. But I hope we see Jason come, at least pop up here and there, but I don't think it would be anything consequential at the end of the day.
I think it's gonna. So I feel a little bit differently. I feel like we are gonna get more of him. Definitely the comedic stuff, but it feels like they got to give him at least one moment to shine. It doesn't have to be a big moment, but just helping out, or they're in trouble, because the ghost is popping up. By the way, I mean the teasers that they've shown now, the trailers or the TV spots.
You can actually see it, or you go back to episode 1, you could see it.
Yeah, I saw it. It's
in the hangar. It's really far in the back.
Yeah, but some of the
Not
TV
on Jakku,
spots,
man.
some of the TV spots show the ghost. And so wherever the ghost is, I'm assuming that's where Jason's at. So I do feel like we are going to get something where he does help out in some way. Again, I'm not saying he's going to save the day or anything. It's not about him, but I just feel like, maybe he and Chopper do something together, right? So I'm looking forward to it. Should it happen? And I would be okay if this is all we got, but that just seems like a kind of a waste, or not a waste, but it doesn't make sense to me, given that he was teased in the epilogue. They've got a Lego figure, which maybe doesn't add up to a whole lot, but the fact that we've got him on the screen and he had 3 lines and then he just disappears, I don't know. That seems weird.
Yeah.
Not as weird as Zeb not showing up, but I still don't know how we're going to get there. We're 3 episodes in.
Yeah, but without the New Republic, again, I think we speculate on this. Hera making a call to people to help. It depends on how much she's going to follow orders directly, or if she's going to go strike out on her own with the ghost rather than bringing a fleet or anything like that. So maybe she can make a call out there and have other people help. But that does seem more like a penultimate episode, or the very end of the season or series, whichever one is actually going to be, at the climax of all of it.
Yeah. I did like that he called her Auntie Sabine as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we flip over to the Denab system again. This is back where Sabine's kind of talking about her struggle, whether or not she can use the Force. She says this is where she tells Ahsoka, I can't feel it right at all. So I think that certainly is that certainly signifies or signals where she's at in all of this. We'll see where she comes from all that. And again, this is where we get the whole talk about the talent and training and focus to define success. Not everyone can handle the type of discipline that takes to master the Force. And she says, start small. And when she walks away, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but when she walks away and we cut back over to her and she's sitting there trying to move the cup of the Force, that's probably all of us at some point in our lives. I think I was pretty candid on one of our episodes where I said when I was really young, I just watched The Empire Strikes Back. I was maybe like 8 years old. Watched The Empire Strikes Back. I came home and all I wanted to do was like move objects with the Force. And I was like trying to move books and bigger things. And I had the same idea. I'm like, holy crap, I'm doing this all wrong. I'm going way too big. I need to start small. So then I started getting like dimes and pebbles. And I cannot tell you how dumb I was and how much time I put into trying to move the tiniest bits of particles and pebbles, which of course I never was able to do it. So, I guess all that to say is I think she was all of us at some point doing this. And I really love that scene, and it resonated with me, especially when she gave like the evil eye to the cup, like to be continued. I've got your name, and this isn't over yet.
You win this round. That was cute.
Yeah, right.
Well, I got to be honest. I mean, how many people in the last week? Definitely not me. Go into a store with the doors that open, and you wave your hand just arbitrarily, just for fun. We've probably all done it 1,000 times, so we're all guilty of it. Yeah.
So, the conversation between Ahsoka and Huyang after she goes back up to the front there, and he's talking about how she's not an acceptable candidate, and she, quickly says, not by the Jedi standards, and I just love the fact that he kind of brought up something that I think Ahsoka hadn't really considered, that she was brought up by non-traditional Jedi. And so it certainly tracks with Sabine. She is by far the most probably non-traditional of that lineage. But it was almost like she had a revelation. I think this plays into later on when she finally gives in to allowing Sabine to kind of call the shots or do what she needs to do to be successful, rather than trying to control the situation and do what a Jedi would do. And so I think you know what I'm talking about there. But
Right.
how did you, I guess your thoughts on that whole non-traditional line and thinking about the lineage? Because, yeah, those are a bunch of, mavericks there.
I had to really think about it because I was like, did I really consider Obi-Wan Kenobi a maverick? And I was like, not really. Qui-Gon,
He was probably the most traditional out of all of them. Yeah. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, Qui-Gon made sense, right? Anakin made sense.
yeah.
And I guess even Dooku, if you go back that far too, makes sense. And so yeah, Obi-Wan was probably the most, typical of all of them. Although he did have his moments as well, right? And he allowed Anakin to behave certain ways and actually went along with it. So I think from that respect,
True.
all that kind of tracks a little bit. And I guess even if you go back further from Dooku, learning from Yoda, is Yoda considered non-traditional? Probably not, but so I think it works. But again, I like where you went with it though too. That she does have that recognition, that realization, and she is trying to do things differently and not kind of control what Sabine is, because Sabine's got to get there in her own way as well. So she's got to give her the space. She needs the structure, kind of like what Hera talked about, a couple episodes ago. But you can give the structure, but you can also give a lot of space within that in order for the person to find their own path, because she's only going to be able to unlock the Force or, whatever her abilities are, only if she truly feels like, if she's truly invested and actually feels it herself. Like she made that path all on her own. Someone's not going to just lay it in front of you. It's not an exam to study for. It's something that you really have to get there on your own, but you've got to give them that latitude in order to go and find it and figure out what's best for them to do. And again, this goes back to the comment where she makes it. She doesn't need Sabine to be a Jedi. She just needs to be her best self, basically.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with everything there. So let's talk about them coming up on Denab, and there's a communications disruption, which, Jonesy, can only mean one thing:
Invasion.
So, but yeah, they come out of hyperspace early, and they kind of mention this a couple times, and it seems like it's kind of a reoccurring thing where Hu Yang's always talking about the protocol, or what was it that I can't remember what the word is that we use, but it was almost like, oh, he's antiquated. These are old tactics. I mean, there was Natasha Liu Bordizzo is doing such a good job with her facial expressions, very similar to like Sabine when she's talking about that, and she's like, oh, he's doing this again, kind of thing. I just love a lot of the facial expressions that she's doing. But I just wondered too, like, I wonder if this is going to come back and like actually it's going to be in their favor that they followed protocol at some point. Maybe they're kind of hinting to that or alluding to it. But this is when we get into this whole kind of what I'm calling I called it the Red Tails scenes. Someone mentioned earlier in the chat, Red Tails is the World War II movie that George Lucas directed. Jorge said, love the episode. Did y'all notice the dogfight was shot and edited exactly like the one in episode 4? It's almost shot for shot the same. I had not noticed that. But
yeah, the first sequence where they kind of roll behind it is where like the TIE fighters roll behind the Falcon and shooting. It was very, very similar. It was almost exact in some ways, and they kind of come back and do it again. So yeah, there were a lot of similarities with what we saw in the original dogfight in A New Hope, which was really great. No, this was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Definitely need to go back and watch it again for that reason alone. But essentially, there were 2 squadrons, 3 ships. It sounded like Merrick was kind of running one, Shin was running the other. And I mean, I want your thoughts, I guess, on this. We're not going to go into every detail of the fight, but some of the things that stood out to me were obviously the relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine, how that was kind of rocky at first, and Hu Yang calls him out. He's like, "You're both are going to get us killed," kind of thing, because they were just kind of squabbling and not really working well together. And it was Ahsoka, I think, who finally realized, like, okay, you just tell me what you need and I'll give it to you. And the minute they did that, the whole battle changed and their demeanor changed. And so I love the fact that we're seeing shades of that. And it's really exciting to kind of see, if this continues to flourish, just how successful they can be, because they're going to need it to, like you said earlier, take on everybody they've taken on, find and bring back Ezra, take down Thrawn. They've got to get to a better place. Definitely saw shades of that. Yeah. What did you, I guess, kind of your thoughts on what stood out for you during the space battle here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the small things that add up. And again, these are smaller moments, right? But they're good stepping stones in order for Sabine to feel like Ahsoka is going to give her the flexibility she needs to be successful, right? And Ahsoka has the self awareness to be able to know that that's what she needs to provide, even though she's got Huyang kind of in her ear, saying, "Do you have any idea what you're actually doing effectively?" And so it's nice that she can take that time and give her that trust. And we saw this with Sabine and Hera back in Rebels too, right? When they were talking about they went to the planet with, I can never remember the beings out there, the ones that lived in the shadows, and she was always complaining when Hera was Fulcrum, right? Or when they were interacting with Fulcrum rather. And she was like, when are you actually going to trust me, right? And so we get the same parallels here as what we had between Sabine and Hera later on, or much earlier on in Rebels. And so to have those moments come and take root here, I think make a lot of sense, right? So trust is really important for Sabine. It's really important for Ahsoka too. Ahsoka needs someone that she feels like she's not going to look over her shoulder at her allies as well. And Sabine is a bit of a wild card in many of those ways. So Ahsoka is also kind of training herself to be able to be open to allowing Sabine and trusting Sabine to take care of things, like when she has to go out and distract Shin and company while Sabine's trying to make some repairs to the ship. But overall, the space battle was a lot of fun. I love the imagery when they go into the planet's atmosphere with the Purrgil and everything else. Man, some of that was just absolutely beautifully shot. The different lighting, the green lasers, the Purrgil, the water on the windows from the atmosphere and the mist. It was just beautifully shot. It was probably one of my favorite just sequences that we've had from the series yet.
Yeah. On that thought, I guess going back to Ahsoka and Sabine, the one thing that the way I would summarize how we saw their relationship develop, for the first time, I think in this series at least, it did feel like a master and apprentice relationship, right? You see the master and apprentice always worked well together, or hopefully, I mean, conceptually, that's what you wanted. And we got to see great moments between all of our favorite master and apprentices, and we're not going to get into all the examples, but it did feel like they were kind of truly working in that dynamic, which was really great and exciting to see, of course. So we get into, I guess, so Shin throws this line, or I guess Morgan does, to Shin saying, "I'm surprised you let them get this far. Stay clear. I shall deal with them." And that's just the first line, the first salvo. I mean, I have a feeling like one of these folks is going to die in this series, either Shin or Morgan Elsbeth. And I wouldn't be surprised if the other one is who kills her. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can see where Shin would have enough with Morgan Elsbeth, or I think Elsbeth would feel like she's incompetent and want to put her away, or she's a threat maybe at some point. But yeah, I mean, that's some bad blood there already kind of brewing. We picked up on this in the first two episodes. Like, there's some signals in there that were already starting.
Oh yeah, there's no mystery about their general disdain for one another, wherever that's coming from or what that's all about. But yeah, and Shin's satisfaction when she tells her congratulations, you almost had them. You just feel the glee emanating off of her when she goes in to go finish up her trash, basically, and finish cleaning up her mess. So they're able to trade that back and forth. And I'm with you. I think their relationship probably comes to a head more so than them with any other particular character quite yet. Although I imagine Shin and Sabine will have quite the dynamic here to developing here in the next episode or two. But so that'll be interesting. I like the idea of them fighting, actually. But I also like the idea of it being a draw and Morgan Elsbeth maybe drawing on some other magics that she learns, to where it's not necessarily the Force, but it's the magics in your mind and things like that. They get them to a draw, even though they're kind of fighting it out. But yeah, I love this dynamic though. It's always this weird tension, but it's also funny in some kind of ways too. That the typical Empire always trying to one up one another in their chase for glory, effectively.
Yeah, climbing up the corporate ladder at times.
Right.
And I'm with you. Like, I would prefer that Shin be the foil to Sabine and vice versa more than Morgan Elsbeth. But kind of to what Alexander's saying in the comments, she said, I'm very curious to see where the dynamic between Morgan and Shin leads them, because it's just a little bit chaotic, and I think it could lead to bad things for them, right? Kind of a wrench in what they're trying to do, whether it's Morgan's, what Morgan's trying to do, or what Shin's trying to do, or the overall plan. I don't know. It's brewing, and it's going to come to a head at some point. So let's just leave it at that.
It's a good counterpoint to what we see with Ahsoka and Sabine, right? And even with Huyang in the mix, like they're actually trying to work together, where these others are, not really helping one another at all. It's you go do that, and I'll go do this, and you're always on your different terms. Now, granted, that's not the same relationship that Shin and Baylan Skoll seem to have, which seems like it is much more, in sync with one another, like we would expect of a master and apprentice. But again, you just see the differences there, and that counterpoint to it it makes sense why the Empire isn't always very successful if they don't have mass advantage in some way, whether it's numbers or technology or whatever else.
Yeah. I totally geeked out on the turbo lasers being outfitted on the Eye, right? It was just cool. And it makes sense because, she's got access to all of these parts that they're salvaging from the Imperial Star Destroyer. So why wouldn't she, armor up on that thing or throw some weapons? And what better weapon than a bunch of turbo lasers, which honestly, like, I'm surprised her shuttle lasted as long as it did, because that's some pretty massive firepower that they were going up against. I mean, this is what they pretty much outfitted the entire Death Star with, everywhere. So kind of speaks to just how powerful those things are. But anyways, just small geek out moment there on that particular part. There was, and then when Shin tells Merrick to kind of break off because they're going to turn it over to her, I think this was confirmation that this was Farm Boy, aka the Man in Black, aka the Dread Pirate Roberts, aka Wesley, aka Carrie Elwes. What's the heck? Elwes is his name. I joke that this is what, because he says "as you wish," and anytime I hear "as you wish," all I think about is The Princess Bride. So I put something out on social media about that, and I thought it was funny if no one else thinks it was, but
I thought it was cute.
Yeah, thank you. So, but more, I guess, funnier, I should say, this is where Hu Yang kind of gives us the, closer, please, when he's talking about trying to get closer, scan complete, when he was done, and just him kind of going in and out of consciousness at times. It was almost like a C-3PO kind of thing, but I just love this. I mean, I guess I wasn't expecting this much comedy coming from Hu Yang. I thought, he's always been kind of more of serious, I don't know, strict kind of disciplinary character, because he's a teacher for the most part, for lack of a better term. But
let me ask you a question then. Yeah, no, I agree with you. He's fantastic. Which one do you like better though? Do you like Hu Yang or AP5? For comedic element, which one are you leaning towards?
Well, it's like two different. It's like you're asking me to pick between like Jerry Seinfeld and Robin Williams. It's very different approaches to comedy, but I think I like more of the deadpan kind of like dry comedy. So I still think AP5 is my favorite.
Which is funny because Hu Yang is kind of the same way, but just a little more dynamic voice to him.
Yeah, right. He's got more. Yeah, he's a little bit. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. He's got more personality in his voice than AP5. That monotone voice of AP5 is what gets me, and that's
everything's just, you talk about matter of fact period. Like there is no inflection. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting to see which one you liked better.
Yep. So there were a couple comments in here I want to quickly talk about for the visuals. Jeff said, I'm always super impressed with the visuals. Everything in space flying through atmosphere looks so great. This series, again, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the coffee in me right now, but it just feels like the visuals are better than we've seen, even like in some of like Mando, especially the Purrgil scene, which we haven't got to yet and I want to talk about. I'm with you 100%. There were moments in there just like jaw dropping of what they've done with the shadowing and just the stuff closing, the tentacles closing in, and the music. And I mean, it was just all working and so well. So I would agree. The visuals so far have been pretty outstanding. Rob chimed in as well and said the red forest is stunning. What a great setting. And I think we're going to get that in quite in spades here, of course, in the next episode. And we've already seen evidence of that from some of the teasers and TV spots. So definitely agree there, that looking forward to it as well. All right, let's talk about Ahsoka in space. So this is so we didn't get the fishbowl, but that's okay. What's that?
Thankfully, we didn't really need that. Would have looked ridiculous. Yeah,
it probably would have looked ridiculous. I mean, it was fine for the Clone Wars, but I would agree. Now, this has kicked up all kinds of people upset about how quickly she was able to costume change into, what essentially is kind of like a form-fitting or custom-made, custom-fit space outfit. Yeah, I mean, get over yourselves.
Even for Montrose, everything was fit.
Well, get over it. Like, why are you worried about this?
She used the Force.
Whatever. I don't even care if she didn't. Who cares? It's not the point of the show. Like, it's so funny that people can pick and choose what they want to be a realistic, yet they're watching a movie that's based on the Force and lightsabers and physics aliens that don't make sense in our real world. I mean, it's just, come on, guys, just get over it. I loved everything about this, honestly.
Clark Kent can change in a phone booth, just saying. So.
Well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I enjoyed everything about this. I mean, her coming out, I thought that was a pretty epic moment too, when, she's just standing there, the door opens up and then ignites the lightsabers, and she just kind of holds there. The music kicks up right here. I can't remember what Kyner's doing, but it's almost kind of like the drums of war that start up again. And I'm thinking, holy crap. And the first thing that came to mind when I watched this is, and this was in, I think it was in The Force Awakens, if I'm not mistaken, some of the concept art where we had Rey, hanging off a ship or hanging in the pilot ship, and she had her lightsaber out, and she was kind of running along the bellies of fighters, TIE fighters, or whatever it was, and blowing up ships that way. And I was thinking, holy crap, he's going to actually do this. He's going to like put her, she's going to hijack one of these ships. She's going to be flying around, cutting stuff up. And we didn't get that, but we still got essentially the Rey moment where she cuts off Kylo Ren's wing on his shuttle. It was just, some poor sap that did it. But I love this idea. I love the fact that she made herself bait. She baited them, because every one of these guys was thinking, I have my opportunity to take out a Jedi on the wing of a spacecraft in space. Forget the fact that I could just blow the whole ship up. I'm targeting
How
I'm targeting
epic will
this
this story
Jedi.
be over drinks? Yeah,
Exactly, right. And it's perfect. Like, she was the perfect bait. They totally bought into this, and it was just enough time to buy, or it was enough to buy time for Sabine to get everything back online. So I guess your thoughts on the fight here.
I liked it. I think the only maybe missed opportunity was not to, or was Ahsoka wasn't, her actions weren't very quick in order to deflect multiple shots all at once and kind of like give her, like really show Ahsoka and how talented and gifted she really is and what her abilities can be. And you're in space. I know everything is supposed to be slower and things like that. But that would have been a really great opportunity to really highlight what she's truly capable of in her skills. And I thought that was about the only other missed opportunity. I'm surprised more people didn't get all caught up in how is she sticking to the hull of the ship. And then when she jumps, she's then floating off or whatever. Why not use the Force or whatever to come back? So I'm surprised the things that people do choose to get upset about, and some things they seem to be okay with. But overall, I thought this was fine. You said it perfectly. She's the perfect distraction, right? This is something like, how are you going to buy time when you're just dead in the water in space floating? You have a Jedi out there with 2 lightsabers, and you have 2 Force wielders at least shooting after you, and they're going to want to they want that prize, right? They want that glory. And so it just buys you enough time in order for you to, to get the ship up and running well enough to where you can escape. So, mission accomplished. It worked really well. So it was kind of fun. And again, for those that are familiar with Clone Wars, it was a really great callback to see something in the Clone Wars, come back to this as well. So it was kind of fun. I was like, holy crap, we're really going to go here? I guess so. I wonder how, in my head though, I was immediately thinking like, how are people going to take this? Are we going to lose the audience that don't know these references to where they just kind of like check out in that moment? So I'm glad they didn't dwell on this for very long.
No, yeah, I would agree. I don't think they dwelled on it. And I think for most people, if you hadn't seen it, I think this is something you probably have never seen. Well, you haven't, right? Canon
A Jedi in space, right?
Yeah, Jedi in space. What does that look like? I think it opens up a lot of questions, like you said, and there are some things that we just kind of have to accept and move on, like the fact that she couldn't use the Force to, Mary Poppins her way back into the hole. She had to wait for for Sabine to churn the wings on the ship for her to get back in. But I mean, again, this, don't get too carried away with that stuff. I mean, it's always just better to enjoy the moment and have fun with what they're trying to do, which I think they did here quite a bit.
I do like Sabine's reference though. The one time she needs Hu Yang, he's offline, and she
right.
Yeah,
And she kept looking over it. Yeah. Yeah. She kept looking over to him like, if I just turn him on though, I mean, if I could at least try, but Ahsoka was right. If they're dead, they can't bring him online. So again, the voice of reason there and experience talking right there, wisdom. Okay. Let's talk about the Purrgil. This is another one where I got real emotional when I saw them. As soon as they said there were objects on there, and they had the little blips, and I thought, this is it. Because I mean, it was coming. We'd already seen in the teasers and the TV spots. We'd already seen this was kind of the atmosphere, but I guess I just wasn't expecting to come from right at the camera. They're massive Purrgil. Everything we've already talked about the music and just the cinematography, the special effects. Everything just works really well, and it was really cool that. There wasn't a lot of dialogue while this is going on. They were granted, they were pretty much just trying to survive before one of these things took out their tiny, tiny little ship. Right. But, that actually enhanced that experience for me. Like it enhanced being able, because I was just so enthralled and intrigued and fascinated by how massive these things were. Because even though, I think we talked about this, the ones that we had in the season finale of Rebels, I mean, some of those were pretty big, right? Because they literally latched on to the front of a Star Destroyer and booked it out of there, right? So, but and I think since then, they've come up with different classes or different sizes of Purrgil, and I forget what the term is called, epic Purrgil, or I don't know. They've got a name now for the biggest of the big ones, but I think definitely we were seeing some of the largest Purrgil that we've ever seen. I've got a theory that I posted about on social media around why they were here. Granted, there's all the right reasons for them to be here. Yeah, but I just wondered, like, it felt like it was too coincidental. And then I started going crazy and thinking, what if Ezra had actually, knew, because he's over there where Thrawn's at right now, wherever that may be. And he sees that he's communicating with someone, knows that he's communicating with someone, feels it's intimate or imminent before he finally actually is able to get out of there and get back to our galaxy here. And so he dispatched the Purrgil, or asked these Purrgil, can you please go out to this particular planet? They were sitting there waiting for Ahsoka and Sabine to show up. Again, far-fetched theory, but I just find it weird that they were there. Now, it could be a convenience of plot that they're there because now they have a way to get to the other galaxy in some way, maybe like we talked about, where they commune with them through the animal affinity kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I got a lot of questions about why they were there. So
it's out. I mean, your theory's out there, but also I think fundamentally, I think there's a part of it that you could, like with Ezra saying, hey, go be at these places. I mean, there's a migratory route, so you could probably, they don't have to explain this anymore than what they already have, right?
Yeah, and that's what I meant. Like, they're probably there because they're there, and that's what they've done for eons, right?
Right. But I think the only part I'm not on board with your theory is that Ezra told them specifically where to go. I think it would have been more of a general thing of like, hey, keep going back out, to these places. At some point, my friends will be there, and you can help them find me and get to that place. I think that seems reasonable to me in some way. So I like that.
What if
like
he
that
knew?
part of it.
Sorry, here's me coming up with more theories. So what if he knew? We talked about the reflection points, or was it reflection or inflection?
Reflection. Reflex point, yeah.
Reflex point, that's it. Yeah, because we got into reflexology in the first episode. That was pretty exciting. But I just started thinking, well, maybe there are so many of them, and he knew where they are, and so he dispatched multiple Purrgil and said, this is the only way they're going to be able to get here. And so he's had these guys, staking out this area for God knows how long. And there are other ones too at the other points, but
yeah, I mean, it's something that Ezra would at least try to give signals, right? And give the opportunity out there, and that he would be thinking about that again, maybe not as literal or very specific points, but saying, please keep going back there. And when they do come, he does commune with them again, not really knowing what is Ezra's state right now, or where is he at? What is he a prisoner? Is he in control of his situation, or whatever that might be? So we'll learn that, presumably here over the next few episodes. But I do like the idea overall, though. But it was really striking to see them on screen. I like that we get the Hugh Yang's perspective on some of that too. The star, I guess they're not space whales, they're star whales. Mike Rondo, sorry, we have to correct you a little bit there.
Yeah.
But but I like that we do get the migratory patterns and the way that they feed in with the hyperspace routes. All of that stuff makes sense. Of course, now the credits make a lot more sense as well. So that piece has been kind of solved for us too. We presume that was the case anyway, but we got that confirmation, so that's nice. But I like this though. I think that seeing the Purrgil in the atmosphere, because at first when I was trying to remember the episode after seeing it Tuesday, I didn't get to watch it again yesterday, but I was like, man, where were they on the planet? And I'm like, why are they in the atmosphere? Why aren't they like just in space, right? Or why are they in the atmosphere? And so, but I like the idea that they're kind of a part of the planet. There's something about the planet being a reflex point that is not only hyperspace lane type of thing, but it's also appealing to them in some kind of way. So while I would love to know more about that, my expectations that we would get any more around those lines is, next to zero. But, I like the idea that I don't know, I like the way they handled this. I thought it was really nicely done. And to your point, we talked about at the beginning of the show, their responses to it, the way they light up, both of them, both Sabine and Ahsoka, and look at each other because they know what this means, right?
Yeah.
They know the opportunity that's now in front of them. Now they also presumably know the risk, and all these things make a lot more sense all of a sudden, right? About why it's so important for the enemy to go get Thrawn, because this is one of those places, right? So, but the opportunity that's in front of them, you see this renewed hope that they haven't had in a while, and they both share that joy of knowing that they're onto something here.
Yeah, I mean, they're one step closer to Ezra, and I'm going to assume that they've never, in the 9 years or however long they were looking for Ezra prior to this series, never came across the Purrgil.
Right.
So this is a big step for them. So going back to the reason why the Purrgil were there, You're right. Like and this is even my theory. I guess what I posted on social media, I kind of said something similar, that the more obvious answer is that they're here because this is just a stop in their astrological travels, right? Just the way whales in our own real world do. They have a pattern that they go through, and they make the stops, right, on their way to wherever they're going. However, I do find it odd that they happened to be on this planet. We could also chalk it back up to the first time we see the Purrgil, where they were going down into, I forget what the planet was called, but they were kind of using the gas or eating the gas or whatever it was. So maybe there's something there. They were feeding, or this is kind of some, nesting place, or a reproductive place, or wherever they go, or who knows what it is. So I mean, it could be something as simple as that. But I just do find it weird that they would be there outside of the convenience of the plot. I just hope that there's something more there. I'd love for them to be like in the know and be there for a reason. That reason being because presumably Morgan and whoever else, they're going to get this hyperdrive fired up and they're going to take off. And that's going to leave Ahsoka and Sabine and Huyang and anybody else scratching their heads like, what do? We don't have that thing. We don't even know where we're going. So, and we kind of called this during our final hype episode of like, how would they even get out there? The Purrgil is the most natural, connection and the most natural way they would get there. So whether, again, that's Ezra in a current whack theory that Ezra sent them there and they're going to help them now get out there, or the fact that maybe, again, Ahsoka or Sabine, maybe it's just Ahsoka, talks to the Purrgil and says, hey, by the way, you remember us, or maybe you don't. We know Ezra. Do you know Ezra? Hey, we'd love to, if you could take us there, we'd appreciate it. They strap in there or, get under a tentacle and they blast off. But I don't see any other way they're going to be able to get to there, because I don't think there's another star map. There's not enough time to go through that whole process of them finding it. The whole series will be over. We'll be in the movie by the time they get all that solved. So I can't see any other explanation at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see them stowing away on the Eye of Zion or something like that, or Eye of Sion rather, either. Yeah, right? It doesn't seem like it would make a lot of sense. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the Purrgil is a natural resource there. The only other possibility would be a world between worlds of something to an extent. That's more of a pulling someone out, and then how do you put them back in the moment? So a lot of question marks there, but the Purrgil is a natural, I think, place for us to be able to do that. I do like that we got all the confirmation, the information about the Eye of Sion, though. That it is capable of not only great distance but great speeds, right? And those things matter when you're talking about intergalactic travel, because presumably these journeys would then be years or lifetimes away if you're not able to go fast enough and far enough. And so it makes sense you need these gigantic hyperdrives, and you need more than one of them. Yeah,
you need 7. Yep. Which, I don't know. There's something about that. Didn't I say there were like 7 lines that were all coming to Peridia? I know it's probably the migration paths, but it's just coincidental, I guess.
It just reminds me of the Prince song.
Okay. Let's see. So there was a line in here that Huyang finally wakes up. He's scan complete, which I thought was really, again, another great moment there. We finally came back online, and they told him they had almost died multiple times. And then, he said standard operating procedure. Yeah. So maybe that's it. Like I said, that would probably come back up at some point. That's probably all it's going to do. And that's why they set up that joke, which I'd be okay with at this point. But there's, they're talking about, what's the feasibility about going to another galaxy? Oh, by the way, so I want to give credit to Sky, because I was going on his tirade about people using intergalactic versus extragalactic versus intragalactic. Right. And I went and did the research because I was wrong. But I want to give credit to Sky because she actually mentioned it in our Discord. So you can use intergalactic and extragalactic.
Right.
They're the same word. You can use them for meaning you're going from one galaxy to the other, but you can't use intragalactic for going from one galaxy to the next. So
right. If you're in the U.S., think about it this way. Interstate is a highway between states. So you think of it that way. Extra is outside, so that works too. Intra is always within your border. So and inter is between, intra is within.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not 100% convinced, but no, I'm kidding. I am. I get it.
You just want to be difficult sometimes. That's all that
sometimes. Is. It's all the time. That's how the show got started. But he says the Jedi archives speak of intergalactic hyperspace lanes between galaxies, which used to follow the migration paths of star whales named Purrgil. So Huyang has got some information on this. Maybe we'll get more. Maybe they'll use some additional language, or additional information, context he has in the Purrgil. Maybe they'll use that to, again, hitch a ride.
Now, do you think that information was really closely guarded and safeguarded, knowing that Do you think the Jedi understood and knew that there were other intergalactic species that had come and done things in our galaxy?
I
Kind of like this planet that we're on with CTOS or anything like that, and maybe there was a threat. Do you think that was really closed off information, or do you think it was no, it was there, it just wasn't always relevant because there was enough going on within the galaxy itself?
All right, so not to get into legends, but the whole point of outbound flight, and we brought this up again when we were talking about the the Thrawn episode that we did for Patreon.
Right.
So the whole purpose of outbound flight, we're getting into legend stuff, was the Jedi were wanting to. They were pro. Let's get outside our known regions. Get out to another galaxy, meet other people, kind of thing, right? Be exploratory in that nature. I think about the High Republic and kind of what was going on there. And I think, I don't know, I don't want to say I've got a discrepancy or things aren't lining up, but I got questions now, especially that they've introduced the Purrgil as kind of being, the antithesis of hyperspace lanes or the, maybe not the birth of it, but there were, yeah, sorry, I don't want to get too off topic, but to get back to your question, I think the Jedi were probably not keeping this information withheld. I just think it's so difficult to track down a Purrgil, and then how do you even speak to them? How do you learn from them, right? We talked about the Rakata in Legends and how they were influenced, so the technology that they use was influenced, or we kind of borrowed their technology and kind of reverse engineered it in some ways in Legends. So I don't know. I guess the Jedi would be fine with it. I don't think they were really purposely holding on to it, but you never know. I mean, if there's something that's really out there that was a threat to the galaxy or selfishly a threat to them, right, to peace and prosperity, then maybe they do. Maybe they kind of did guard that information so that it couldn't get out, and they suddenly they're being thrust into some intergalactic war.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I think with the Purrgil, the opportunity is there, but how do you leverage that? But then also the practicality of doing it on your own. And again, hyperspace had to be you had to be able to go fast enough and far enough, right? And both of those were limitations of technology. But at least the Purrgil inspired some of this stuff, and this is how we learned about some of them. In some case, makes a lot more sense of where this was even conceptually idealized conceptualized as a possibility of hyperspace in the first place, and that you would find it naturally in your galaxy makes a lot of sense, but that you're not able to replicate it entirely yet, again, I think makes a lot of sense, and kind of keeps things here. And it that's why I like the Eye of Sion, the way they've structured this, is because it is something very special and unique. It does take something very, very different than what we have readily available to us to be able to accomplish this type of feat from what we want to do, but also speaks to why is this thing so big? Is it just to be able to go these vast distances, or is it meant to, we could actually bring more back with us? Although maybe it's just really just designed, truly just a transport ship just to get there back and forth. But I like the idea that they could still attach things to this and it would still accomplish that goal of bringing back things to our galaxy that would give them an incredible advantage that we can't comprehend yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I actually like the idea more that, because I mean, why wouldn't you just strap, again, not to go to outbound flight, but that's what they did, right? They just strapped a bunch of ships together that
Right.
gave them the firepower, the horsepower that they needed to get out to another galaxy. Why make it such a big ring? And I think we're onto something. Hopefully we're onto something where I think it is kind of like, hey, if you get a bunch of ships within a proximity, maybe it creates some kind of a bubble and the whole thing transports and sends everybody, because they're going to, presumably, I think we've been theorizing that they're going to bring back Thrawn's fleet. Whether it's as is, new enhanced fleet, the Katana fleet, if they want to roll in some of the stuff from Heir to the Empire, I don't know what it is, but it feels like he's going to have to come back, and it's more than just him. So they do need a cargo vessel of some sorts, or something, something like that. So I can see where they do use that in that way. I'd love to see that, actually.
Yeah. And before we move on, Noah had a good question here of, do you think we will see any more creatures like Purrgil and Loth Wolves that are capable of hyperspace-like travel? And I think the answer is probably going to be not for some time. At least nothing quite like this. I think 2 is probably enough at this point. But I think the opportunity is always there, that there are other, exceptional creatures or exceptional beings out there that are capable of doing things that we haven't thought of or we haven't done yet. I think is fun and interesting idea, but you just can't flood the market with all of that stuff, I think. So it's important to make the special things still feel very special. So I think if we do have something, I think it might be for a while down the road if we introduce more like the Purrgil.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I think it's probably a finite number of things that can do these types of things just to keep them special, to keep them unique. I wouldn't be opposed to getting to know more about them, right? Or if they expand upon the abilities, because the Lothwolves, maybe they do more. We get some more insight into what's really happening when they do that, or same thing with the Purrgil. I think they'll probably go down that route before they introduce yet another kind of animal, which I think they've already done in the Lothcat. I think we just haven't seen it, but that's,
Stop
the
it.
theory for another day. Okay, so we get to the final scene, which I was hoping would be, I kind of theorized it was something totally different, and that's okay, but it's a very simple scene. Balin's sitting there. He's got his thugs, which, by the way, what language are these guys speaking? Not that it really matters.
I don't know.
There's a lot of languages out there, but, they're not using a common language. So, yeah, all right. I won't get into theories, but he's standing there. He's got his thugs behind him. He says, to go, what has he said? Hunt down the Jedi who sought refuge in the forest. And so this is going to lead, of course, into the other spots that we've seen now, the TV spots and the trailer footage. I presume we're going to get the fight between Sabine and Shin. We're probably going to get the fight with Balin and Ahsoka. There'll be a lot of thugs that are going to die horrible deaths, a la, Return of the Jedi indoor forest scenes, or we'll get some of that stuff. That'll be all nice and fun. But there is something where they're after they've kind of left, Balin, if you look at his face, he does look again very, I wouldn't say distraught.
He's concerned.
But there's definitely something on his mind. He's thinking about something. And it could be as simple as like, war has begun. Or now, I talked about the reality of Ahsoka coming here and that's going to lead me to have to fight her. Maybe he's just reflecting on the idea that it's going to happen. It's materializing. Or he's, we've already kind of talked about, and they've hinted that he may be force sensitive in, visions, or being able to kind of predict certain things. Maybe he's just getting lost in the moment and realizing that, this is deja vu, or this is all happening as I've foreseen. And ultimately, maybe he knows what the outcome is. Maybe this is him reflecting on his potential death. Like he's not going to make it out of the fight with Ahsoka, or, something there. But would you agree that there was something on his mind as that camera cut and we went to credits?
Yeah. And I think all of that is in scope too. I think all of that's possible, because that was the first thing I went through has he seen this moment already, or has he felt these moments already, into where he knows that maybe this is leading to his death or to this incoming battle. I think also Ahsoka's determination that he had mentioned previously, is it just that strong to where he's feeling it and he's just kind of absorbing and taking in that moment. But I think you're right. There is concern on his face. I wouldn't call it distraught. I agree with you there as well. But definitely there's more to it, and he's getting himself prepared for the upcoming battle that he knows is coming, and that this is not going to be easy. And if he can't see the outcome, that would be even more, worrisome and bothersome to him, that he's not able to see things like he normally is. It's clouded, right? And we were already starting to get a sense from him that there are certain things about Ahsoka that cloud his ability to maybe view them as clearly as he wants, or as he maybe usually does. He doesn't have that clarity of sense and purpose, with her for some reason. And again, that probably disturbs him quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, this was a great episode, honestly. I think I liked it more than the first two. And even though it was the shortest of the three episodes, but there was just so many, for all the reasons we've already talked about, but just the references and the overall tone just felt like Star Wars. It felt like Dave Filoni. It felt like George Lucas. All all the references and the Easter eggs aside, there was just something thematically and tonally about this episode that I thought was really great. So I'm excited to see where episode 4 goes at 40 something minutes. And then of course we're already talking about the just under an hour episode in episode 5 that Dave Filoni is set to direct. And, I expect that we're going to get our Anakin Skywalker appearances and our Thrawn appearances and our Ezra appearances. That's all coming up here pretty quick.
Yeah. It's hard to believe we're already we're going to be halfway through after next week.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Again, a lot of things are going to start coming at us pretty quick. So a good series. This is a good linking episode, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This connection between, where we were at and where we need to be, and the way that they did this, and they did it in such a cinematic and visually appealing way, but while also working in the story elements with it, is really a great way of this is how you do these types of episodes to where they don't feel like filler, and they still give you things to really lean on. Now, again, with an 8-episode series, you would expect there not to be true filler or anything, but we also know it does happen from time to time. So I was really relieved that this was not one of those cases, given that it was a shorter episode. So really well done on their part. And Steph Green's directing on this was also very, very good. Again, my only criticism was there were maybe a couple of little pacing things, but overall, nothing I was going to complain too loudly about. It was just beautifully shot, though. I mean, you're right. The imagery in this series so far, I think this episode in particular so far has been my favorite visually striking episode. Just absolutely fantastic to watch.
Yep, agreed. You know what's absolutely fantastic to watch is...
Yeah, it's all the amazing comments we have over in our live stream. So if you are listening to this, we would invite you to come over to the live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you're watching this and you've enjoyed the video, please do consider liking it and subscribing to it. Leave us a comment. We do try to go out there and respond to all of your comments, whether they're on here YouTube or over on Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. Also, someone was talking about it earlier before. I think Skywalker's Academy mentioned it, and you mentioned earlier on Discord, cantinacast.com/Discord, which is a Patreon-only feature for us. We had a really great conversation in there in the spoilers channel, so you can have spoiler or non-spoiler conversation for Ahsoka. A lot of people are super excited about this. As you said, there was a lot. You were in there posting a lot of great things. You're kind of doing a bit of a recap on the episode as you watch it and those kind of first initial feelings that you're having on it. So that's been really fantastic, and people seem to really enjoy and want to respond to that. So invite people to come out there, use that benefit. If you're a Patreon member, we would love to have you. And again, those in the live chat tonight, hopefully I don't miss anybody. We had a lot. We had tons of people in here tonight. Steph, Alexandra, Jack, Gary, Sky, Rob, Danny, Qui-Gon J, Keaton, Jeff, Ash, Jay Valley, Risk, 80s Kid from the 90s, Noah, Jorge. Thank you all so much for chiming in and all of your thoughts. We had a blast putting them up on the screen and commenting out. So we hope that you will come back next week for the next episode as well.
Yep, agreed. And so we'll be back this weekend. We've got the Way Station, so we'll do the news and rumors this weekend. And we've got a Patreon episode that we're going to do as well, which I'm keeping the topic under wraps for now, but expect to see a title card here in the next day or two once I get Jonesy to start working on
what you tell me what you want to do,
which is the theme around here. So
yeah.
Okay.
And again, if you're a Patreon member, please go listen to the last episode where we had a small announcement. We'll bring it back. We'll bring it to everybody here soon. But thank you to everyone for all of your comments there.
Yep. Okay, guys. We'll see you guys here this weekend. And I changed the background on you.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.